Welcome to the Brandon Market Podcast, the show for short-term rental owners who want to turn their listings into legacies. I'm your host, Allie Haney, owner and co-host of multiple properties and founder of Brandon Market, where we help Airbnb hosts and short-term rental investors build intentional brands, smart marketing systems, and guest experiences that actually move the needle. Each week, I share practical strategies, real-life stories, and behind-the-scenes insights to help you attract the right guests, increase bookings, and run your rental like a business, so you too can be the best in your brand and your market. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Brandon Market Podcast. I have a special guest today. Her name is Yasha Wells, and she's going to be teaching us all about private equity and private money lending. I know a lot of you guys are short-term rental owners and you're looking at your real estate investments through that single family home lens, but she's going to dip our toes into some commercial investing strategies. And I'm just super excited to have her. Yasha came into my just network, I guess, through a really great friend named Angelica Pompey. We are in a community together that is online called Business Church. And originally I joined that community. There wasn't really many real estate people, I don't think, when we first joined, was there, Yasha? And then suddenly there started to become a few more real estate women, realtors for single family homes. And then of course, Yasha as with the private equity background. And really, that is all based around marketing, because even owning a branding and marketing agency, it's always the cobbler's family is the last one to have shoes. It's always the marketing agency's business that's the last one to be marketed. And so I was doing my best to pour into my own cup, which is why I joined Business Church and encountered Yasha. I'm super excited for this connection. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Yasha, to tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and who you are.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Allie. I appreciate it. So yes, I have been a licensed real estate agent since 2014. So a little over a decade. And, I was on the up and up with the market. So I got to experience some high highs and definitely some low lows. But through that journey, I, like a lot of investors, love bigger pockets, and I just consume that on a daily and wanted to transition out of being an agent, because I know that's never the end goal. And I've always said, as an agent, I never wanted to be an old realtor, because there are so many of those out there, and no shade or anything to them. But I just knew I wanted something where I didn't have to stay on this hamster wheel or rat race forever. In the interim, my husband, he's also a licensed general contractor. And for whatever reason, he never pushed me to start going down that path. And it was just more of letting me have that self-discovery. And so, especially early on in my career, we dabbled in working together and doing single family home developments. And then, we started working our way up together with smaller single family home developments, like smaller communities. And then here we are now building massive industrial buildings and self-storage, and potentially expanding into some other areas with mobile home parks and RV resorts. So, yeah.
That's crazy. So that transition from realtor to capital raiser, am I using the right terms?
Yes.
Okay. That transition from realtor to capital raiser was mostly because the realtor role didn't necessarily fit into your long-term goals. What did that transition look like? I feel like you kind of just gave a very short synopsis of it. And I want to know what the mental space was when you actually made the jump of being okay, I'm going to just change my entire, what I do on a day-to-day basis, what I put out on the internet, all of the things. That's got to be a big mental shift for you.
I'm so glad that you asked that, because it really was. It was so challenging. And I like to tell people that I had an ego death, to be honest, because when you're a high performer and just someone who strives to always be the best at what they're doing, it was really hard. I was actually terrified to put it out on the internet and say, I'm shifting out of this industry or this space of real estate and into another part of it. But honestly, I am so glad that I did that. It was one of the best moments of life. It was definitely, one of those highlight moments where you're man, I'm so glad that I did that, and I don't want to ever look back.
An ego death is probably the most accurate description I've seen of that, because I think so many times people just have this extreme fear surrounding what the heck is everybody else going to think if I suddenly feel like I switched this trajectory so severely, so quickly? So what seems like it probably had been on your mind for quite some time, but from the outside looking in, it's more like, what is she doing? This seems so like out of character for her. And like stepping back and probably looking like hindsight 2020 now, it was like, that was such a natural, normal transition. I don't know why I was so scared of that.
Seriously. And it was so funny because I was already raising capital over the year before, but I was doing it like privately and like quietly. I didn't make any like announcements about it or anything. I was just doing it in the background. But then I decided, I'm not in love with what I'm doing anymore. And being an agent in today's market is also like 10 times harder than it was when I was originally an agent and just doing that over the last decade. So especially like after COVID, we started to see, those market shifts and just struggles. And it was just like, I'm not in love with this process anymore. And it's like, I know I can endure hard things, but this was something I was not willing to take on anymore and to be on that roller coaster.
Yeah, it's one thing, knowing that you're capable of doing it, but also do you want to do it? And like it brings it back to, is that serving your long-term goals? If not, then why would you endure it other than to suffer?
Yeah.
So I have one more question about the transition. You had mentioned that you were doing some like single family home developments, and then you switched over to the industrial properties. Walk me through what made you decide to switch, because you could technically still raise capital. You said you were raising capital for those single family homes. So what made that transition from the single family homes to like commercial stuff?
Well, I'll actually walk back a little bit more. So we never raised capital for single family homes, but we realized, when me and my husband were working together, we were like, okay, we're not getting any younger. And we would love to just pour our energy and efforts into a bigger asset class with bigger payouts. Because as that market shifted, also the construction business for my husband shifted, and it made it harder to offload these properties or like to, build them and then sell them. It made it super difficult where we were having to give away, so much in closing costs, dropping the price, all of those things that most investors face with single family. And whereas we know, okay, our profit margins are going to be slim, a lot slimmer on single family, I'd rather take a bigger asset and have still a bigger, profit margin at the end. Even if I'm walking away with north of $1 million, like I'm happy, right? So it's just a different ball game, but knowing that we have the capabilities and the resources to do that level of project too is what made us decide, okay, this is where we want to go in our business and the direction we want to go.
So describe to me exactly what an industrial flex space is. I'm having a hard time envisioning it. So I want to know what it looks like when I drive down the road. Like, which building is it, the one that Yasha's raising capital for?
Yes, that's a great question. So I always help people envision this by saying, if you imagine like a large Amazon warehouse, we're 100,000 square feet and smaller. So we're more that small to mid-size space versus like the big ones like Amazon's probably, housing a lot of their items in.
That is crazy. That's crazy. I feel like that's such like how did you, why that? Like, I know that you said the returns, but was there, because you mentioned like RV parks and stuff too, the industrial flex, is it just because of the returns, or is there some sort of like passion behind that? Like what's there?
Right when the market was starting to correct after COVID, right before that, my husband actually built one for himself. So he was renting out of space for some time. And then he was like, okay, I remember him driving me by the lot. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to build my new office here. And I was like, okay, whatever, you're just like, okay, whatever. And then he took me back again and showed me all the progress. And I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe like he did this. And I was like, oh, cool. This is so cool. It's close to our home, all of this stuff. But then he quickly outgrew the space because he was buying these machines from Vietnam and China and things for the other arm to his business, which is steel manufacturing. And so he was, he just quickly outgrew it. But during this time, the pandemic was happening, and so we were like, okay, let's see what the market will take for this. And we doubled our money and we were like, okay. But then that caused another problem for us. We were like, well, where do we move to? And there was no inventory on the market for the size space that we're looking for. So he ended up moving into a very old and distressed building downtown Jacksonville. And he is like, man, I can't wait to move out of here. So, because, he has to take care of all the repairs and things himself. Because, leasing this type of space is a little bit different than leasing a residential home. And so, yeah, that's what pushed us into this market, and seeing that there was no inventory. There was either like the super big ones, like for Amazon, or just bigger companies, but never for the smaller people, small businesses, the mom and pop shops. Like there was not enough of that. And so that's what pushed us into this direction.
You saw a gap and you filled it. That's
Yeah.
incredible. And I feel like oftentimes in a couple's dynamic, there's like one dreamer and one realist, but it sounds like both of you guys are dreamers. Is that right?
In some cases, I'm more of the dreamer in like the marketing and what's possible with building out the business. But we've identified my husband is the true visionary of our company. And I am more of the integrator, because I am the person that needs the roadmap. And once the roadmap works backwards, all of that. So
that's awesome. I'm so glad that you guys figured that. That's a hard conversation, because I mean, a lot of our listeners, they come together to like do this side investment, which is a short-term rental or something in the hospitality space. And almost always it's like there's one person that's like leading the charge. It happens in our relationship too. And then there's like that supporting role that kind of like grounds you. So I love that you guys were able to come together and see your strengths and figure out which one was going to play which role, because a lot of times that conversation's never verbally had and you kind of just fall into it, and there can be some conflict there sometimes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So a lot of, like I said, our listeners, they're short-term rental owners, are in the short-term rental world, and they enter into that world believing that it's passive income. I'm sure you've probably heard that term so often. And then they get into it, they purchase the house, and they quickly realize that hospitality is very, very operationally intensive. While some people love that, like me, I love being that person that welcomes people in through the front doors. Some people don't love that. And so they tend to look for a way to diversify. Maybe they still keep that investment, but they want to diversify their investments with something that might be a little bit more truly and traditionally passive. So how does private equity investing compare to the time and involvement that you would spend operations-wise with a short-term rental to something that might be truly passive? What does that look like?
Yes. So with being in private equity or finding operators like myself to invest with, it is truly passive. Like I always tell people, you can be an investor in real estate without the tenants or the toilets. And you don't need to, go out and do these things, especially if it's not one, your passion, or knowing like all of the risks associated. But then two, like just not wanting to in general. Like if you're in a different industry outside of real estate, but want to be involved and want to see like huge returns or better returns in real estate, you don't have to acquire property and start a whole second business. So that's one of like the hills that I will die on. But I also had to go through those learning moments and experiences, because way back, we also got into the short-term rental game. And at one point, and that was like my very first like true investing like experience. And we had 30 rental arbitrage units here in Northeast Florida. And it was during
30 arbitrage units?
30.
Okay. Let's go down that rabbit hole for a second. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
What was that like, Miss Integrator Operator? Holy moly.
Oh my gosh. Like, let me take a drink of water for that one. So that was my first like taste of like real estate investing, because I'm so glad my husband let me, or gave me the space to just test the water, see what works for me and things. Cause I've tried so many different things. And I'm like, I was like, I like that, but I think that was a one and done for me. But we saw the results of the pandemic. But then once the market conditions changed, and when everybody was getting into the market and flooding the market, because we have a lot of different factors here, such as the travel nurses, we have a lot of major hospitals, we have CSX here, multiple military bases, and it was a great season and it got my feet wet. But then I immediately knew that I wanted to differentiate myself from a lot of these other operators here. So we ended up buying a lot in St. Augustine, Florida. It's the oldest city in America. And because I was like, I want a duplex, I want a duplex. And so we hunted for quite some time for a place where we could do nightly rentals in St. Augustine, because it's very street by street down there on the island. We did that. And so then we built it, and then I furnished it. And then I was like, I don't want to do anything. So after those 30 rental arbitrage units, I said, I don't want to do this. We need to find a property manager who specializes in this and wants to live and breathe this. Because after that experience with the rental arbitrage, I was like, no more. And I'm done with that.
At 30 units, that's a full-time job.
Yeah, it really was. And it was like crazy. From just guest bookings and the cleanings and just, when people break things or can't
contractors and oh my gosh. Not to mention like doing any additional marketing. That's just like treading water so that you're keeping your head above water.
Literally. But luckily,
what time frame was that in?
In 2021.
Okay. So it was post-COVID, and that was kind of when there was a rush back to everybody coming to like traveling again. So you were probably slammed to the wall with guests.
Yes. It was great. It was great when it was great, but it also can be not great when it's not.
So how did you get out of the arbitrage?
So we finished out the leases, and then we just totally scaled back, started to sell off the furniture and all the things. And then we actually kept some, because our last single family development community, we just transferred that furniture from those apartments into the new construction homes, and then sold the homes that way. So had multiple, lots of moving around.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you go all in on the private equity and private money lending?
So within the last 2 years. So that's when we started to go all in on that, because I went back to, doing the agent thing. And I was like, okay, but then just starting to see that the market didn't improve, because I was like, I'm hanging on. I was like, I'm going to ride this wave, and just see if I can catch it on the way up again. But I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore, because it's not the same. I used to buy like Zillow leads and all the things, but it's not the same.
And like you said, if you were just recognizing again that this didn't fit into your long-term goal, and you were probably just finally willing to be able to pivot to a place or a role that did. I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier from the private equity and how that is much more passive, because the arbitrage thing was just too good to pass up. But yes, sorry, let's go back to that. Tell me how it can be completely passive, and how you don't really have to have real estate experience to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, you don't. And so for me, I work with everyday people, and I help them earn those double-digit returns backed by real estate. I think that it's really important to understand what you're investing in, but more importantly, understanding the operator and what they're doing and how they can protect and secure and ensure your money. I think that is so important versus necessarily like the deal. Yes, still understand the numbers, but understand who you're working with and partnering with, because I have seen so many things in this world and people losing money, and that's not ever a fun experience to go through as well. It being passive by just understanding those two key pieces, I think is so important. And then just knowing how you're going to get paid. So for us, as an example, we pay out quarterly dividends to our investors, and then they have a full cycle at the end of 18 months. So they'll get their their return upfront through those quarterly dividends, and then they'll receive their initial investment back at the end of the 18 months. But I think for a lot of our investors, they were so excited when we started paying out. They could not believe. Like one of my investors who's earning over 22% on her money. She literally just took her retirement funds and invested that money into our project. And she is like, wow, I can't believe how much money I'm making. And she's going to be making over 30,000 this year, investing with us.
Passively. She's not doing anything else other than wiring you the money.
Yeah, literally just wired it. And then all I'm doing is making her payments back every 90 days.
Wow. Okay. For someone listening we've used the term private equity multiple times, but they don't fully understand what that means. Can you explain it to me like I'm 5?
Yes, I know. Cause I still do this with my kids too. I'm like, do you understand what mom does?
Oh, yeah. I don't think my kids understand what I do either. I don't even know if my husband understands what I do, but it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. So what private equity is where you're investing into for me, a site-specific syndication. So where we're raising money and you're taking your either liquid cash, your retirement funds, other sources of income, and investing it into a real estate project where you do not have to do a thing. You don't have to swing a hammer. You don't have to be licensed. You're just investing in that opportunity, signing documents, especially the one where we know how to pay you back and pay you your quarterly payments. And that is really it, what private equity is. Now, there are so many different avenues in private equity. So you could be in real estate with large industrial buildings like ours or self-storage. You could also be in boutique hotels. You could be in multifamily. You could be in apartments. I've even seen some for like the retirement homes and communities like that. So there's just a wide range of how people can get started and get into investing in general.
Look, y'all know the tagline for this podcast is turning listings into legacies. We start a short-term rental business for one of 2 reasons. We either really love real estate or we really love hospitality. But what if I told you that you could do both and do them both well? Lodgify is how I do that. I can run an operationally sound and therefore profitable business while also loving all my guests and leaving some margin for some unreasonable hospitality. Lodgify can help you create your own direct booking site, manage your reservations and guest messages, automate the back end of your business, and stop depending entirely on other platforms that you don't control. Lodgify helps you build your business, something sustainable, something that allows you to love on your guests, and something that helps you turn your listing into a legacy. Use my code BMPOD20 for a special discount until the end of July. That's BMPOD20 for 20% off all yearly Lodgify plans. Cheers, y'all. So you mentioned doing your research. Like if I'm an investor and I have, I'm going to say $50,000 to invest, how do I do the research on the operator that you suggested that I do? What are the questions I should ask when I'm faced with this type of opportunity?
Yes. The number one question that you should ask is about their track record. You should know that they have some sort of experience, license. You should definitely check out their licenses in general as well. You would want references of other projects that they're doing. And then I think the number one question that I get asked is, have you lost money? Have you ever not paid an investor back? And because I think those are the scary things. But anyone should be willing to answer those and be very open about them. So those are just a few, but I can always provide a free resource. I do have one about the top 10 questions to ask. And also just checking out their website and knowing who they are and are they active on social media from Instagram to LinkedIn or Facebook, and seeing what kind of person they are. Because I think people can get a good feeling or just a good gauge on what they're doing out here.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting that you mentioned LinkedIn because that's something as I have gotten more inquiries for personal brands within the hospitality founder space, I encourage because obviously they're just looking to create that investor list, right? So that they have a warm pool of investors whenever a deal does come along that they are able to phone that investor because they've already created the trust, the familiarity with that person. And LinkedIn is one of the first platforms that I recommend they start to become active on if they're not already. So I'm curious what that looks like for you. How do you find your investor prospects? How could somebody get in touch with you? What's the normal cadence of that?
Yeah, so I am very active on LinkedIn, but it's mostly me repurposing my content from like Instagram or YouTube to LinkedIn, just in the format for LinkedIn. And then from there, I actually get a lot of leads from Instagram, because I'm very just, I'm just on there. That's my platform of choice. But I've also gotten leads from YouTube as well, because I utilized all of like my skills from being an agent to being a capital raiser now, and seeing how those have been very interchangeable and transferable. So from that process, though, all they would do is book a call, and then they'll start to receive communication from me, and then we'll actually meet. And I love to learn about like what their goals are, who they've learned from, and then what they're trying to do, and just seeing if we're a good fit.
Yeah. What are some of the common goals that people have with investing with you?
Most of them is because of the market and, things not being always affordable, or people not wanting to do things long term or long distance. They are wanting to just park their money. I do work with a lot of 9-to-5ers. So those are always just the best, because they're not trying to necessarily learn alongside of us, but love that they get to stay in their lane and then watch their money work for them.
Yeah. And you guys are based out of Jacksonville, Florida, but do you do any projects outside of Jacksonville?
Yes, so we do them also in St. Augustine. We have a couple that we're looking at or under contract on in like Ocala. And then we do have another development going up right now in Punta Gorda, Florida, which is a little south of Tampa.
Wow. You guys are all over the place. And those are all industrial flex properties.
Yes, except for the Ocala, those will most likely be RV resorts or mobile home parks.
Okay. What made that transition?
Well, going back to just like working with your spouse, just seeing that evolution and seeing how we can continue to put all of our energy towards bigger gains, and knowing that these types of projects can also create that residual income for us. And I actually want to touch on one more question that you should ask an operator that brought, to mind. And that is that you should ask what type of fees they're charging for. So as an example, for us, we are no fees. We don't see our profits until the end, but I have heard some crazy stories where people are charging, 10% for the construction, 1% or 3%, on the acquisition, the management. Like there's all these fees baked in. And yes, I think that capital raisers and just the fund or syndication should get paid, but not so extreme. And that's where we also realize like, well, hey, some of our investors want a little bit more long-term plays and not necessarily 12 or 18 months. And they want to stay in a little bit longer to keep their money working for them. So that's what helped us transition a little bit more, just adding another layer to what we do, because we have a lot of the licensing from the general contract construction and the real estate piece. And then my husband also has a roofing and underground utility license as well. So we're the whole party.
That's amazing. And I think that kind of goes back to figuring out that initial consult call that you would have as the operator with the potential investor of what their goals are going to be, because a 12-month return is far different than 36 or 48 months, like, a much longer time period. So it's really nice that you have the options to be able to find a project that's going to fit their goals. We talked about kind of from the investor side, what are the questions I need to ask the operator? But let's say we have a listener that might be interested in raising capital themselves. Like, what's your number one piece of advice to go about starting that like type of capital raise?
Yes, that would be to get in the room. So immediately when when we decided this was the direction I was going to go in, I said, who's out here doing what I do? And there was honestly, just even a year ago, there was not a lot of people like posting about things like this, or just even understanding the language, because I am in two communities. And one of them, it's like super beginner friendly, but then the other one is so advanced. And I think and I did it kind of opposite. I joined the more advanced community first and then joined the more beginner friendly, because I had to fill in some of those gaps where I could understand a little bit better, just a lot of the language, and being able to just ask better questions. Because I mean, I can do all the training all day long, but if it's not clicking or making a connection for me, there's just a disconnect and I can't be efficient with what I do and how I do it. So really just getting in the rooms, listening, learning from other capital raisers, I think is really important as well. I know I feel like it's a very closed door business where people aren't just going to hand out their playbook. So in some cases, or in most cases, you do have to pay to play, and learn from people. So, or just study what they're doing.
When you said get in the room, I first thought you meant like get in the right rooms where the investors are going to be. So that answer didn't go where I thought it was going to go. So you're saying get in the rooms where you can learn the things that you need to learn, the tangible things to be able to execute and operate. But does that go for also like in the rooms with the investors? Like where would you suggest finding the first one?
Yes. So I would, of course, it's always easy to reach out to your direct network, because you never know who's watching or wanting to get into real estate investing or just investing in general. And so starting with your network, and that's what I did because I immediately went back to all of my past clients that I worked with as a residential real estate agent. And then I started just broadening from there because social media helped amplify and get there faster. And, because then people started having those inbound leads. But also, one of my biggest things that I do is I go to a lot of networking events. And I know as I progress, a lot of my other coaches are saying, okay, now you just need to be doing like webinars and things like that. But before we even get to those, we have to know how to talk to people in person or be able to talk to them via Zoom. So I would suggest going to local real estate investment meetups. Also think outside the box. And I get a lot of investors at other networking events that are not real estate centered. And it's because I'm a unique outlier in most cases. When people are in the marketing space or branding or anything like that, they're like, oh, wait, what? You do this? And so they're really interested because they may be very successful and great in their career and just want to park their money. It's doing better than the stock market. It's better than a high yield savings account, and being able to see that tangible return too. So.
Yeah, kind of going off of that it's better than the stock market or the high yield savings account. I know that you're not a CPA, so I'm going to preface this question with that. If I was an operator that's trying to raise capital and selling them on the tax implications or the savings that they might get, is there anything surrounding that we could use kind of as a secret weapon in our back pocket that's going to benefit them?
Yeah. So I think it's really, again, going back to those goals. There are some tax implications because you will receive a K-1 at the end of the year from any deal that you're investing in. And so you do have to file that, but there are ways around that. For example, if you use your retirement account, that's just tax deferred until later on, but no major things to work around at the moment.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to throw you a curveball for a second. I want you to toot your own horn. I want you to give me one of your best success stories that you are willing to share with us for returns on the investor that they got, or maybe it's a relationship that you built with an investor that's now become a friend that's a repeat investor. Tell me your best story you got.
Oh man. Okay. So, here's a perfect one because she's literally always singing my praises. And I posted her on my Instagram yesterday. She ran into my husband at Kava and I was like, oh my, she's like, I need to take a picture. And she sent me it.
Like a celebrity.
He was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? But so this individual, she actually knew me when I was a real estate agent, and she's bought 3 properties, but she never bought any of them with me. And I thought that was so just wild. From that, though, she saw what I was doing on social media. She saw on Facebook and Instagram, and she was like, hey, I'd like to meet with you and talk, because it was already 5-6 years since we first initially met, and just stayed in touch online. And so she ended up being on one of our deals last year at the end of the year, and she's earning a 22% return on that. But now she's in a lot of my marketing. She's on my website. She's everywhere. And she actually just filmed a testimonial video for us within the last month. But literally, she just calls me, and she's gotten her husband to invest. She's had her other family members invest with us now. But it's just like those relationships, and I love it. And if she ever listens to this, she'll know who she is, because she always tells me, I get to go on vacation because of you. And knowing that her money's working hard, even though it's all going back to her retirement account, she doesn't physically have to get out there and do the work as hard if she chooses not to. So she's just living her best life.
That is amazing. I get to go on vacation because of you. Like those, I won't even say small impacts, those impacts in somebody's life, like that is so incredible. And I think that's the part. It's not necessarily just to keep making more money, right? Of course, that's a part of it, but it's the freedom that money allows you to live the life that you've always wanted to live. And that's the beauty of it. So I love that so much. I know that you've mentioned social media multiple times throughout this. If you guys don't already know, Yasha is a social media queen. She said Instagram is her preferred platform. She's over there a lot. But recently, she's had a little bit of a challenge within her social media presence. And I would love for you to share more about that. I don't want to spill the beans. You go tell the full story.
I love it. Yes. So literally one day, my Instagram immediately became disabled. Like my platform that I was, I had so many leads on, just connecting with people, it literally just was disabled, and I was meta verified. So that was even the more like crazy part of the story, is that no one could give me an answer as to why. Like it was disabled, when it will come back, if it will come back, because at some point, like when I kept calling and talking or getting on the phone with support, like they were like, oh, if it's disabled and it didn't give you an opportunity to review your account, like it's just deleted. They were just like, it's gone. And I'm sorry, it's not going to come back. So I was like, okay.
And wait, pause. Like how many followers had you accrued at that point?
Oh, so I literally, not even a month went by and I was already over 10.5 thousand. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, everything that I worked for, it's gone in a blink of an eye. And it was honestly just the most like, I don't know. I lost my trust with the internet a little bit at that point. And, but I want to say this is that everyone should be building their email list, no matter if you're in any type of investment, strategy. You need to be building your email list always.
Thank you. I don't feel like I say that so often, but it's like, it's so true, because that's what you own. Like nobody can take your email list away from you. And even so, I would caveat that with that email list, I want you to back it up and export that CSV file every so often, just in case, okay? Crazier things have happened, right? But I loved the resilience that you showed because I was like kind of watching live as this was happening. And all of a sudden I saw like a different Yasha Wells account and I was like, huh. And you were like, this is really me. This is my face. This is my voice. This is not AI. Like I'm here and this is the story that happened. And you immediately sent out an email to that email list. And now you've already built it back up. What was that, like a month ago? It hadn't have been that long.
Yeah, it actually has been almost 2 months already.
But you've still built it up to 500 something followers in like less than 2 months, which is absolutely crazy. And I would say that probably is largely due into like reaching out to your email list, because they trust and verify, they know who you are.
Yes. But the crazy part about this, I think this was like a great experience to go through, even though it like sucked. And actually my Instagram account came back. But
I didn't realize that part.
I know. And I was just like, what is going on? But that's why you do need to build your email list. But with this transition happening online, it made me realize like, okay, I don't need 10,000 followers, even though like, yeah, I was starting to get like brand sponsorships and stuff like that. Like I was like, oh, but with this, it helped me hone in on my messaging. And if I haven't read the book, 1,000 True Fans, or like True Fans, but people have always talked about that. And so I think that spoke to volumes to me. And like, that's kind of like how I dealt with it. I was like, you know what? I only need 1,000 true fans. Like, we've raised already over $9 million with only 26 people. So I'm like, I don't need 10,000 followers. I just need my 1,000 people that are going to ride or die for us. And that's it. And everything else is icing on the cake.
Give me one small like tweak in the messaging that you made during that transition that made it so much more pungent or poignant to the person that you were trying, the 26 or the 1,000 that you're trying to speak to.
I would say that it was really honing in with women, entrepreneurs or other women that are wanting to get into the real estate investing space. That was the little tiny tweak that I made, because I always used to say I help everyday people earn double-digit returns backed by real estate. But now it's I help high achieving women passively invest into real estate without tenants or toilets. So just that one little line just even clarified more of my message. And because that's a lot of who I work with. And yes, I do still work with men, but women are my audience. And because I think there's so much power in helping other women who are wanting to get into this and to just build generational wealth.
I remember the first time I saw somewhere, I think it was maybe inside the business church community, you mentioned the tenants and toilets tagline. And I was like, that's it. That makes so much sense. Speaking straight to their pain point.
Yes, literally, because we don't necessarily always want to buy another property or anything like that, but we just want our money working just as hard as we are already.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much. I have one final question, and this is a question that I ask all of the guests on the Brand and Market podcast. If you had one piece of advice to give our listeners, what is that piece of advice to become the best in their brand and their market?
I would say to not only show up online, but be willing to say the things that a lot of people are censoring in your industry, because so many people hold back, or you just see a lot of that copycat content, and you just need to be the outlier and just say the things that people are not willing to say or address, and just go all in on that, because that's going to separate you from the pack.
That is so true. It's like, I can't remember where I read this or heard this, but it was basically like, whatever those invasive thoughts are inside the mind of your ideal client, ideal investor, ideal guest, say it out loud, because it's going to like give them chills that they're like, oh my God, how does she know that? But yeah, absolutely. Be the voice or the spotlight on the things in the industry that perhaps other people aren't willing to say. That's absolutely incredible. Well, Yasha, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. I would love if any of our listeners are looking for that truly passive investment with no tenants or toilets, how could they get in touch with you to potentially become an investor in one of your projects?
Yes, I would say if you want to start the conversation before we even book a call, the best place to reach me is on Instagram, and I'm at _Yasha Wells. And we also have our website, blueprintindustrialcapital.com, where you can book a direct call. But even if you just want to be nosy and follow, like that's okay too.
Awesome. And you mentioned that you had that one free resource about the 10 questions that you can ask an operator. I'm going to try and grab that from you when we get off our call today. And I will make sure that I link that in the show notes so you can grab that from Yasha too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care. You just completed another episode of the Brand and Market podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.